Carl Jung, the renowned Swiss psychiatrist and founder of analytical psychology, believed that our wounds are not just sources of pain, but also gateways to profound transformation. He taught that within our deepest struggles lie the keys to self-discovery, wholeness, and individuation. In this video, we will explore why your wounds hold the answers you seek, how they shape your life's journey, and how embracing them can lead to personal and spiritual growth. Carl Jung often emphasized that our wounds are not just obstacles to overcome, but gateways to deeper self-awareness and transformation. When we experience pain, whether emotional, psychological, or spiritual, it leaves an imprint on our psyche. These wounds shape the way we see ourselves and the world around us. They dictate our fears, desires, and even our unconscious behaviors. But instead of being mere sources of suffering, they hold the potential for profound growth. In many ways, our wounds are like messages from the unconscious, calling us to pay attention to what has been ignored or repressed. Jung believed that healing begins with awareness, the ability to recognize and name our wounds. Too often, people try to escape their pain by numbing it, suppressing it, or distracting themselves. They may bury their emotions under work, relationships, or addictions, thinking that if they avoid their wounds long enough, they will disappear. However, unacknowledged wounds tend to manifest in other ways, through anxiety, depression, self-sabotaging patterns, or even physical illness. One of Jung's most powerful insights was the idea that suffering is not meaningless. It carries deep psychological significance. He saw pain as an initiation into a greater understanding of oneself. Rather than something to be rejected, our wounds are an invitation to embark on an inner journey. When we stop running from our suffering and instead turn toward it with curiosity, we begin to uncover the wisdom hidden within. Jung's concept of the wounded healer archetype illustrates this beautifully. He suggested that those who have experienced suffering often develop a unique ability to guide others through their struggles. The pain they once endured becomes a source of strength, compassion, and insight. Many healers, therapists, and spiritual teachers have walked through their own darkness before they could help others find the light. Their wounds became the key to their purpose. The process of healing does not mean erasing the past or pretending the pain never existed. Instead, it means integrating the experience into one's personal narrative in a way that fosters understanding and growth. This requires self-reflection, honesty, and sometimes the willingness to sit with discomfort. Healing is not a linear journey, it is cyclical. Wounds may resurface at different points in life, each time offering new lessons and deeper insights. Jung also emphasized that our pain is often rooted in our childhood experiences. The wounds we carry from early life, whether from neglect, rejection, or trauma, continue to shape our adult behavior, often in unconscious ways. Many of our fears, insecurities, and emotional reactions can be traced back to these formative experiences. Healing requires us to revisit these early wounds with a new perspective, understanding how they have influenced us and finding ways to integrate them into our present identity. In practical terms, facing our wounds involves inner work. This can take the form of therapy, journaling, meditation, or deep introspection. It requires honesty and the willingness to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves. It also involves self-compassion, treating ourselves with kindness rather than judgment. Jung believed that when we acknowledge and honor our pain instead of suppressing it, we open the door to transformation. The wounds that once seemed like a source of suffering become a pathway to wisdom, resilience, and authenticity. Another crucial aspect of Jung's work is the shadow, the part of our psyche that contains everything we have repressed or denied about ourselves. This shadow is often formed in childhood, when we learn that certain thoughts, emotions, or behaviors are unacceptable. In order to be loved and accepted, we push these parts of ourselves into the unconscious, pretending they do not exist. However, the shadow does not disappear. It continues to influence our thoughts and actions in ways we may not realize. For example, someone who was taught that anger is bad may suppress their anger, only to have it surface in passive-aggressive behavior or sudden outbursts. Another person who was made to feel unworthy in childhood may struggle with self-doubt or perfectionism in adulthood. These hidden aspects of ourselves create inner conflict, keeping us from experiencing true wholeness. Jung believed that one of the most important steps in personal growth is to confront the shadow. This means bringing our hidden fears, desires, and wounds into conscious awareness. It requires deep self-examination and the courage to face uncomfortable truths about ourselves. When we deny our shadow, it often manifests in destructive ways, through projection, self-sabotage, or unhealthy relationships. But when we integrate our shadow, we reclaim the parts of ourselves that were once lost. Shadow work is not easy. It involves looking at the aspects of ourselves that we may not want to see. It requires us to take responsibility for our actions and emotions, rather than blaming external circumstances. However, this process is incredibly liberating. When we accept and integrate our shadow, we become more authentic, balanced, and self-aware. One powerful way to work with the shadow is through self-reflection. This can involve journaling, meditation, or simply observing our thoughts and reactions. Paying attention to our emotional triggers can provide valuable insight into our hidden wounds. If a particular situation or person evokes a strong emotional response, it often points to something unresolved within us. By exploring these triggers, we can uncover the deeper layers of our psyche. Another method Jung recommended is active imagination, a technique where one engages in a dialogue with different aspects of the unconscious. This can be done through writing, drawing, or visualization. By allowing the shadow to express itself in a controlled and conscious way, we gain a deeper understanding of its role in our lives. Ultimately, shadow work is about integration, not elimination. The goal is not to rid ourselves of these darker aspects, but to bring them into harmony with our conscious self. When we do this, we become more whole. We stop projecting our unresolved issues onto others and start taking ownership of our inner world. Jung believed that true healing comes from embracing all parts of ourselves, the light and the dark, the pain and the joy. Our wounds are not meant to be hidden. They are meant to be understood, integrated, and transformed. By facing our shadow and embracing our pain, we unlock the wisdom and strength that have been within us all along. Carl Jung's concept of synchronicity is one of the most profound ideas in psychology and spirituality, offering a new way of understanding the relationship between our inner world and external reality. Synchronicity refers to meaningful coincidences, moments when external events align in ways that feel deeply personal, significant, and almost too perfect to be mere chance. Unlike ordinary coincidences, synchronicities carry an emotional or symbolic weight, as if the universe itself is speaking to us. For Jung, synchronicity was not just a fascinating phenomenon, but a guiding force in the process of self-discovery and individuation. He believed that when we pay attention to these seemingly random events, we begin to see a hidden order beneath the chaos of life. Our wounds, in particular, play a crucial role in this process. The pain we carry often attracts experiences that mirror our inner state, revealing patterns that beg to be understood. If we take the time to reflect on these synchronicities, they can provide insight into our deepest wounds and point us toward healing. One of the most common ways synchronicity appears in our lives is through relationships. The people we meet, the conflicts we experience, and the emotions they stir within us often have deeper significance than we initially realize. Many individuals find themselves repeatedly attracting the same types of relationships: partners who abandon them, friends who betray them, authority figures who belittle them. At first glance, it may seem like bad luck or coincidence, but Jung would argue that these patterns are meaningful. They are manifestations of unresolved wounds from our past, seeking recognition and healing. For example, someone who grew up feeling unworthy of love may unconsciously attract partners who reinforce that belief. This is not because they are destined to suffer, but because their psyche is attempting to bring the wound to the surface so that it can be addressed. The external world mirrors the inner world, and until the person acknowledges and heals their underlying beliefs, these patterns will continue to appear. This is synchronicity in action, a reflection of the unconscious, making itself known through life's experiences. Another way synchronicity manifests is through symbols and recurring themes. Have you ever thought about someone you haven't seen in years, only for them to suddenly call or appear? Or have you repeatedly come across the same number, animal, or phrase at just the right moment? These moments often feel too precise to be random, as if an unseen intelligence is orchestrating events behind the scenes. Jung believed that symbols hold immense power because they communicate directly with the unconscious mind. When we encounter certain symbols repeatedly, it is worth examining what they might represent in our personal journey. Consider the case of someone going through a difficult breakup who keeps seeing images of a phoenix rising from the ashes. If they pay attention, they may realize that this symbol represents rebirth, transformation, and the ability to rise stronger from adversity. The universe, or rather their unconscious mind projecting onto the external world, is offering reassurance and guidance. The key is learning to interpret these messages rather than dismissing them as mere coincidences. Jung was also deeply interested in dreams and their connection to synchronicity. He believed that our dreams often contain symbolic messages that mirror our waking life experiences. Sometimes, a dream will foreshadow an event before it happens, creating a bridge between the unconscious and conscious worlds. Other times, the symbols in our dreams will later appear in waking life, reinforcing the idea that our psyche is trying to communicate something important. For example, a person struggling with career uncertainty might dream of being lost in a vast ocean, struggling to find land. A few days later, they may overhear a stranger talking about the importance of trusting the journey, even when the destination is unclear. This external event, though seemingly unrelated, holds deep personal significance for the dreamer. It is as if the universe is offering confirmation that they are on the right path and should trust the process. One of Jung's most famous examples of synchronicity involved a patient who was stuck in a highly rational, overly intellectual mindset, resistant to the deeper emotional work required for healing. During one of their sessions, she described a dream in which she was given a golden scarab, an ancient Egyptian symbol of transformation and rebirth. Just as she was recounting the dream, Jung heard a tapping on the window. He turned to see a real scarab beetle trying to get inside. He caught it and handed it to the patient, saying, "Here is your scarab." This seemingly impossible coincidence broke her rigid thinking and opened her up to the possibility of psychological transformation. Stories like this illustrate how synchronicity serves as a bridge between the conscious and unconscious mind. It acts as a kind of cosmic nudge, guiding us toward the lessons we need to learn. The more we pay attention, the more we begin to see patterns, themes, and hidden meanings woven throughout our lives. However, recognizing synchronicity requires openness and awareness. Many people dismiss these experiences as mere chance because they have been conditioned to view the world through a purely logical lens. But Jung encouraged people to develop a sense of symbolic thinking, to look beyond the surface of events and consider their deeper meaning. The more we cultivate this mindset, the more synchronicities we begin to notice. Another powerful aspect of synchronicity is how it can provide reassurance and confirmation during times of uncertainty. When we are at a crossroads, struggling with a major life decision, or feeling lost in our healing journey, synchronicity often appears as a sign that we are on the right path. A book may fall off a shelf at just the right moment, a song lyric may perfectly capture what we are feeling, or a chance encounter may provide exactly the wisdom we need to hear. These moments remind us that we are not alone, and that there is a greater intelligence at work. Jung believed that synchronicity was intimately tied to individuation, the process of becoming our most authentic selves. As we heal our wounds and integrate our shadow, we align more closely with our true nature. This alignment creates a resonance between our inner world and the external world, making synchronicities more frequent and meaningful. Life begins to feel less random and more like a deeply interconnected journey of self-discovery. Some people fear that paying attention to synchronicity means abandoning rational thought, but Jung saw it as a complementary approach to understanding life. He did not suggest that people should rely entirely on mystical signs, but rather that they should remain open to the possibility that life communicates with us in mysterious ways. By balancing intuition with reason, we can navigate our path with greater wisdom and awareness. Ultimately, synchronicity teaches us that our wounds are not meaningless. They are part of a larger story, one that is unfolding in perfect harmony with our growth and transformation. If we learn to listen, to pay attention to the patterns and symbols that appear in our lives, we can begin to uncover the hidden order behind our experiences. Our wounds, instead of being sources of endless suffering, become the very keys that unlock our deepest potential. Individuation is one of Carl Jung's most profound and transformative concepts, representing the lifelong process of becoming one's true self. It is not about self-improvement in the conventional sense, but rather a deep and often challenging journey toward inner wholeness. Individuation involves integrating all aspects of the psyche, the conscious and the unconscious, the strengths and the weaknesses, the light and the shadow, so that a person can live in alignment with their authentic nature. Jung believed that our wounds play a critical role in this process. The pain we carry is not merely something to overcome, but a catalyst that pushes us towards self-realization. From a young age, we are conditioned by society, family, and culture to adopt certain roles and identities that may not align with our true nature. We are told who we should be, how we should behave, and what is acceptable or unacceptable to express. In the process, we often lose touch with essential parts of ourselves. This fragmentation creates inner conflict, as we live under the weight of expectations, rather than from a place of authenticity. The more we suppress our true selves, the more we experience feelings of emptiness, anxiety, and disconnection. It is only when we begin to acknowledge and integrate the wounded parts of ourselves that we start the path of individuation. Our wounds hold the answers because they reveal where we have been cut off from ourselves. If a person has a deep fear of abandonment, it may stem from an early experience where they learned that love was conditional or unstable. If someone struggles with self-worth, it may be because they internalized messages from childhood that they were not good enough. These wounds become part of the unconscious, influencing thoughts, emotions, and behaviors in ways we may not fully understand. Jung believed that individuation requires us to bring these wounds into conscious awareness, not to dwell in suffering, but to integrate them into a more complete understanding of ourselves. One of the ways wounds lead to individuation is by forcing us to confront our limitations. Pain has a way of breaking down illusions and stripping away false identities. When a person experiences profound suffering, such as loss, betrayal, or failure, they are often confronted with the question of who they truly are beyond external achievements or social roles. This crisis, though painful, is also an opportunity for transformation. It forces a person to re-evaluate their values, beliefs, and sense of purpose. Through this process, they may discover an inner strength they never knew existed. Jung described individuation as the integration of opposites. This means that instead of rejecting or suppressing certain aspects of ourselves, we must learn to embrace them. For example, a person who is always identified as kind and self-sacrificing may need to acknowledge their suppressed anger or assertiveness in order to become whole. Someone who has built their identity around being strong and independent may need to confront their vulnerability and need for connection. These opposing forces exist within all of us, and individuation requires balancing them rather than favoring one over the other. A significant part of individuation involves reclaiming the parts of ourselves that have been buried in the unconscious. Many of these aspects are hidden in the shadow, the part of the psyche that contains everything we have rejected or denied. For example, if a person was shamed for expressing sadness as a child, they may have learned to shut down their emotions entirely. Later in life, this suppressed sadness may manifest as chronic numbness, depression, or difficulty forming deep connections. By bringing awareness to these hidden parts, a person can begin to reintegrate them and move toward wholeness. One of the most powerful ways individuation unfolds is through life's challenges. Jung saw suffering not as an obstacle, but as a necessary part of the journey. He believed that when a person encounters difficulties, they are being called to evolve. If someone continues to attract toxic relationships, for instance, it is not simply bad luck. It is an invitation to look inward and examine the underlying patterns that keep repeating. These experiences serve as mirrors, reflecting the inner work that still needs to be done. The journey of individuation is not a straight path. It is filled with cycles of progress, setbacks, revelations, and moments of deep uncertainty. There may be times when everything seems to fall apart, when old identities no longer fit, and when the future feels unclear. This stage, often referred to as the dark night of the soul, is a crucial part of the transformation process. It is the moment when the false self crumbles, making way for something more authentic to emerge. While this can be an incredibly painful experience, it is also where the greatest growth occurs. Jung often compared individuation to the process of alchemy, an ancient practice that sought to turn base metals into gold. He saw alchemy as a powerful metaphor for psychological transformation. Just as raw materials must be broken down and purified before they can become gold, the human psyche must go through its own process of disintegration and reintegration. The suffering we experience is not meaningless. It is part of the refining process, helping us strip away illusions and reveal our true nature. One of the ways individuation manifests in everyday life is through a deeper sense of meaning and purpose. When a person begins to integrate their wounds and shadow, they start to feel more connected to themselves and the world around them. They may feel drawn towards certain creative expressions, spiritual practices, or paths of service that align with their deepest truth. This sense of purpose is not something imposed from the outside, but something that arises naturally from within. It is the result of a person living in harmony with their inner world, rather than being controlled by unconscious wounds. Another key aspect of individuation is learning to trust one's inner voice. Society often conditions people to seek validation from external sources, whether through achievements, social approval, or material success. However, individuation requires shifting that focus inward. It means developing a relationship with the deeper self, listening to intuition, and following a path that may not always make sense to others. The more a person aligns with their authentic self, the less they feel the need to conform to external expectations. It is important to note that individuation does not mean achieving perfection. Jung emphasized that wholeness, not perfection, is the goal. To be whole means to embrace all aspects of oneself: the strengths and weaknesses, the beauty and the flaws, the wisdom and the wounds. It means recognizing that every experience, even the painful ones, has contributed to the formation of one's identity. By fully accepting oneself, a person moves beyond the false masks they once wore and steps into a more authentic existence. Ultimately, individuation is a sacred journey, one that requires courage, self-awareness, and a willingness to face the unknown. It is not about becoming someone new, but about remembering who one has always been, beneath the layers of conditioning and fear. The wounds we carry are not barriers to this process, but doorways. They are the entry points into deeper self-understanding, compassion, and transformation. When we stop seeing our wounds as burdens and start seeing them as guides, everything changes. The pain that once seemed meaningless begins to reveal its purpose. The suffering that once felt unbearable becomes the very thing that leads to growth. Individuation is the art of turning wounds into wisdom, suffering into strength, and fragmentation into wholeness. It is the lifelong process of becoming who we were always meant to be. Healing is not a destination, but a continuous journey, an unfolding process that requires patience, self-awareness, and a willingness to embrace both the light and the darkness within. Many people approach healing with the hope that one day they will reach a final point where they are free from pain, doubt, or struggle. But Carl Jung understood that true healing is not about eliminating wounds. It is about transforming our relationship with them. The goal is not to erase the past, but to integrate it in a way that allows us to live with greater depth, wisdom, and authenticity. The journey of healing begins with awareness. We cannot heal what we do not acknowledge. Often people spend years running from their wounds, suppressing emotions, or distracting themselves from their inner pain. They may seek comfort in external sources: work, relationships, material success, or even spirituality, as a way to avoid facing the deeper parts of themselves. But healing requires turning inward. It asks us to sit with our wounds, to listen to what they have to say, and to understand how they have shaped our lives. One of the most powerful ways to begin this process is through self-inquiry. Instead of reacting automatically to painful emotions, we can learn to observe them with curiosity. When feelings of sadness, anger, or fear arise, we can ask, where is this coming from? What is this feeling trying to tell me? What old wound is being triggered? These questions help bring unconscious patterns into conscious awareness, allowing us to see how past experiences continue to shape our present. Jung believed that healing often requires descending into the depths of the unconscious, a process he referred to as the night sea journey, or the descent into the underworld. This is not an easy task. It involves confronting parts of ourselves that we have rejected, feared, or buried. These may be painful memories, unresolved grief, or aspects of our personality that we were told were unacceptable. But as difficult as this journey may be, it is also where true transformation occurs. Many people resist this descent because it feels overwhelming. They fear that facing their wounds will consume them, that acknowledging their pain will only make it worse. But in reality, the opposite is true. What we resist persists, and what we avoid gains more power over us. When we finally turn toward our wounds with compassion, we begin to loosen their grip. We realize that pain does not define us. It is simply a part of our story, not the entirety of who we are. A crucial part of healing is learning to feel emotions fully rather than suppressing or intellectualizing them. Jung emphasized that emotions are not the enemy. They are messengers. They reveal what is unresolved within us. Grief, for example, is not something to be gotten over, but something to be honored and expressed. Anger is not something to be denied, but something to be understood. It often points to a boundary that has been violated. Fear is not always a sign to retreat, but sometimes an invitation to step forward and grow. By allowing emotions to be felt and processed, we give them space to move through us, rather than become stuck within us. Another important aspect of healing is integrating the shadow. The shadow consists of all the parts of ourselves that we have denied or suppressed, often because they were deemed unacceptable by family, society, or culture. These can include anger, jealousy, selfishness, vulnerability, or even hidden talents and desires that we were afraid to express. Jung believed that healing requires bringing the shadow into consciousness, not to act on it destructively, but to acknowledge and integrate it in a healthy way. For example, someone who was raised to always be polite and accommodating may have suppressed their assertiveness. As a result, they may struggle to set boundaries or express their needs, leading to resentment and exhaustion. Their healing journey may involve reclaiming their right to say no, to take up space, and to stand firmly in their truth. Another person who was shamed for their sensitivity may have learned to harden themselves, suppressing their emotions in an attempt to appear strong. Their healing may involve embracing their vulnerability, allowing themselves to feel deeply without fear of judgment. Jung also emphasized the importance of symbols and imagination in the healing process. Dreams, myths, and archetypes hold powerful insights into our unconscious mind. Paying attention to recurring symbols in dreams or waking life can provide guidance on what needs healing. Creative expression, whether through art, writing, music, or movement, can be a powerful way to process emotions that words alone cannot capture. Engaging with symbolism allows us to communicate with the deeper layers of our psyche, bringing hidden truths to the surface. Another essential aspect of healing is developing self-compassion. Many people carry deep-seated feelings of shame, believing that their wounds make them unworthy or broken. But healing is not about fixing oneself, it is about remembering one's inherent wholeness. Compassion means treating ourselves with the same kindness we would offer a dear friend. It means recognizing that we are not alone in our struggles, that pain is a universal part of the human experience. Self-compassion also involves releasing perfectionism. Many people hold unrealistic expectations of healing, believing that they must always be strong, always be wise, always be healed enough to move forward. But healing is not linear. There will be days of clarity and days of confusion, moments of peace and moments of struggle. True healing is not about never feeling pain again, but about learning how to hold pain with greater awareness and acceptance. Relationships play a crucial role in healing as well. Jung believed that we do not heal in isolation, but through connection. The wounds that were created in relationships, such as childhood neglect, betrayal, or abandonment, often need to be healed in relationships. This does not necessarily mean seeking validation from others, but rather allowing ourselves to be seen and supported. Healthy relationships, whether with friends, partners, therapists, or mentors, can serve as mirrors that reflect our true selves back to us, reminding us of our worth and helping us rewrite old narratives. One of the most transformative aspects of healing is learning to find meaning in our wounds. This does not mean romanticizing suffering or forcing positivity onto painful experiences. Rather, it means recognizing that even the most difficult moments contain wisdom. Many people who have gone through profound suffering, whether loss, trauma, or heartbreak, find that these experiences, though painful, led them to deeper self-awareness, greater empathy, and a clearer sense of purpose. Jung believed that when we integrate our wounds, they become sources of strength rather than weakness. Healing is not about reaching a final state of perfection, but about becoming more whole. It is about embracing the complexity of being human, with all its contradictions, challenges, and beauty. It is about learning to hold joy and sorrow at the same time, to find light even in darkness, and to walk through life with greater self-acceptance. Ultimately, healing is a return to the self, a remembering of who we have always been beneath the layers of pain and conditioning. Our wounds are not signs of failure, they are invitations to grow. They are not obstacles on our path, they are the path itself. And when we embrace them, not as burdens, but as sacred teachers, we discover that they hold the very key to our transformation.